Hello, friends. If you're curious about the movie The Hangover, 2009, you're in the perfect place. Don't forget to give this video a quick like, it really helps us out. And if you're new here, hit subscribe to stay updated on all the latest movie deep dives. Let's jump right in. It begins with a phone call, one that cuts through the calm with a bite of regret. The voice on the other end is panicked, broken, and full of apologies. In the background, the desert sun burns down on three men who look like they've just crawled out of war. Their suits are torn, their faces bruised, their eyes hollowed out by something far worse than violence: confusion. They don't know what happened. They don't know how it got this bad. And they've lost the groom. This isn't a story about wild nights. It's a story about what happens when the night is over and no one remembers how it began. It's a mystery hidden inside a comedy, wrapped in disaster, carried on the shoulders of men who were never really prepared for any of it. The plan was simple: a quick trip to Vegas, one unforgettable bachelor party, and back in time for a wedding. But Vegas doesn't do forgettable. Vegas doesn't follow plans. Vegas eats plans, laughs in your face, and throws you back into the daylight with tiger scratches and missing teeth. 4 friends. 1 missing groom. And no memory of what happened the night before. There's Phil, the smooth-talking schoolteacher who's a little too eager to lose himself in the neon jungle. There's Stu, the tightly wounded dentist who lives in a cage of his own design, shackled to a toxic relationship and dying to break free, even if he doesn't know it yet. There's Doug, the soon-to-be husband, the nice guy caught in the center of this chaos. And then there's Alan. Alan isn't like the others. He's not trying to impress anyone. He's not trying to forget anything. He's just Alan. A bearded enigma in khakis and a satchel, filled with strange wisdom and childlike chaos. He's the wild card no one saw coming, the variable that turns a party into a catastrophe. He doesn't belong at a bachelor party, but that's exactly why he's there. Together, these 4 men toast on a rooftop under the stars, looking out over a city that promises indulgence, adventure, and the kind of night you write into legend. And then it's morning. And the room is a disaster zone. Furniture broken. A chicken wandering the halls. A mattress impaled on a statue outside the window. There's a baby in the closet. A tiger in the bathroom. And none of them have any clue what happened. Worse still, the groom is gone. Just gone. And the wedding is in 48 hours. What follows is not a party. It's a hunt. A frantic, hilarious, sometimes terrifying descent into the belly of the beast as they try to piece together their lost night. It's a scavenger hunt with the highest stakes imaginable. Because they aren't just trying to remember what they did, they're trying to find their friend before his bride walks down the aisle and finds nothing waiting for her. Every clue leads to more questions. Every step forward uncovers something more absurd. Stu's missing a tooth and might have married a stripper. Phil's in a hospital gown with a wristband he can't explain. Alan. Well, Alan is surprisingly calm. Because somehow, in all the madness, he's exactly where he wants to be. They encounter a valet who gives them a police cruiser they don't remember driving. A doctor who assures them they were high out of their minds. A wedding chapel with receipts that make no sense. And in the center of all this chaos, Mike Tyson. Yes, that Mike Tyson. Apparently, they stole his tiger. And now he wants it back. But even that isn't the strangest part. There's a man in the trunk of their car. A naked man. Angry. Violent. Unapologetic. And he has answers. Not all the answers, but enough to remind them that their night included gangsters, drugs, beatings, and a blackjack table they may or may not have tried to rob. The pieces start to fall into place, slowly, painfully. It's like unearthing a buried crime scene, but funnier. More ridiculous. And somehow more urgent. Because the clock is ticking. And Doug is still missing. As the mystery deepens, something else happens. something no one expects. These men, who were barely connected by anything more than circumstance, begin to change. Stu finds a backbone. Phil finds purpose. Alan finds friends. Real ones. And somehow, in between the chaos and comedy, a kind of strange magic happens. They begin to understand themselves. Who they are. Who they could be. But the city doesn't let go easily. Every answer leads to a new dead end. Every discovery pulls them deeper into absurdity. A shady hotel room. A trashed limo. A sinister gangster named Mr. Chow who appears and vanishes like a fever dream. Stu wakes up married. Phil wakes up concussed. And Alan. Alan buys them all matching tuxedo shirts because he thinks they're cool. Which, honestly, they kind of are. And then, just when it seems like all hope is lost, when they're ready to give up and call the wedding off, the truth hits. In the most unexpected place. It was never some elaborate kidnapping. There was no grand scheme. Just a sunroof, a mattress, and a mistake. Doug wasn't taken. He was just forgotten. Left behind, asleep on the roof, baking under the sun while his best friends fought tigers, gangsters, and their own stupidity to find him. And somehow, they make it back in time. Bloodied, battered, bruised, but alive. Changed. Bonded. The wedding goes on. No one tells the bride exactly what happened. And the photos? Well, that's another story. Because the final twist, the one that sends the whole thing over the edge, is hidden on a digital camera buried in a bag. They make a deal. One look. No copies. Then they delete them forever. And what they see is everything. That night they couldn't remember becomes unforgettable. The beauty of the story isn't just in the madness. It's in the way it plays with memory, with consequence, with friendship. It's a comedy, yes, but under the surface, it's something else too. It's about what happens when men, drifting through life on autopilot, are thrown into the flames and forced to wake up. It's about confronting the chaos inside themselves. And realizing that, sometimes, the worst night of your life might lead to the best version of yourself. Because in the end, it's not just a wild night. It's a revelation. A wolf pack formed in the desert. And no one ever forgets the night they became legends, even if they can't remember how. It all begins with a desert. Not the kind people cross for adventure or escape, but the kind that waits beneath a scorching Nevada sun, where time seems to stretch like heat rising off asphalt. Somewhere out there, lost in the dust and silence, a wedding is unraveling before it even begins. A phone rings. A woman answers. The voice on the other end is broken, quiet, cracked with exhaustion and guilt. Something went wrong. Horribly wrong. The groom is gone. And the bachelor party, well, they don't even remember it. But it didn't start that way. Just 48 hours earlier, it was all perfectly normal. A group of friends standing outside a quiet suburban home, suitcases in hand, dreams of debauchery in their heads. Phil, the self-assured high school teacher who leads with charm and a touch of disdain for domestic life. Stu, the neurotic dentist, shackled to a controlling girlfriend who calls every hour and questions every move. Alan is Doug's soon-to-be brother-in-law. He doesn't fit in. He's awkward, inappropriate, and unaware of most social norms. But he means well. Sort of. He joins the trip not as a friend, but as a tag-along. A wild card with a beard and a satchel. The others tolerate him for Doug's sake. No one realizes yet just how pivotal he'll become. They climb into a sleek silver Mercedes, borrowed from Doug's future father-in-law, and head for Las Vegas, that glittering mirage in the sand. The plan is simple. Get a suite, enjoy a few drinks, celebrate Doug's last night of freedom, and head back in time for the wedding. It's clean. Controlled. Responsible. At first, it goes just as they imagine. They arrive at Caesar's palace, awed by the towering opulence. Alan, in his childlike wonder, asks if Caesar actually lived there. No one laughs. They check into a lavish villa with gold accents, plush furniture, and a minibar that promises ruin. They get dressed. They stand on the rooftop with beers in hand and the city lights flickering like stars beneath their feet. They make a toast. For men looking out over a kingdom of sin, promising that whatever happens that night, it stays between them. They drink. And then, nothing. The screen cuts to black. When the light returns, it's not mourning so much as aftermath. The room looks like a crime scene. It's trashed. Absolutely destroyed. A chair is embedded in the wall. A chicken struts across the carpet. Stu wakes up missing a tooth. Phil wakes up fully dressed in a robe and sunglasses, disoriented. Alan stumbles through broken glass, somehow still clutching a bag of candy. There's a tiger in the bathroom. And none of them have any idea where Doug is. The groom has vanished. No note. No call. No clue. And the clock is ticking. As the panic sets in, they begin to backtrack, trying to reconstruct a night that none of them remember. First stop, the valet. They hand over the ticket for the Mercedes. Instead, the valet brings them a police cruiser. Their cruiser. Apparently, they checked it in. The questions multiply. They search the suite again. In the closet, they find something unexpected. A baby. A real baby. A quiet, blinking infant with no name, no explanation, and no diaper bag. Alan names him Carlos. For reasons no one questions. Their next move takes them to the hospital. Phil, still in shock, finds a hospital band around his wrist. It's their only lead. There, they meet a doctor who calmly informs them that they were all treated for minor injuries the night before, and that they were, unquestionably, drugged. Not by accident. Someone slipped roofies into their drinks. That someone, they begin to suspect, might be Alan. He bought drugs from some guy on the internet. He thought they were muscle relaxers. He wanted everyone to let loose. Phil doesn't punch him. But it's close. At the hospital, they learn they were last seen at a wedding chapel. So they go. Stu's anxiety is climbing. He's already fielding angry voicemails from his girlfriend, Melissa, who thinks he's at a wine tasting in Napa. She doesn't know about Vegas. She doesn't know about the suite. And she definitely doesn't know that, at the chapel, they're informed Stu got married. To a stripper. Named Jade. Who, as it turns out, is the mother of the baby. That piece clicks into place like a loaded gun. Jade isn't what Stu expects. She's kind. Pretty. Sweet, even. The baby's real name is Tyler. And she has no idea what happened to Doug either. But she does remember that the men were with a strange Asian man in a gold jacket. And that they left in a hurry. That lead takes them to a parking structure where the police find them. Their cruiser was reported stolen. And they're under arrest. It should be the end. But it's only another twist. At the station, they're given a choice. Spend the weekend in jail or participate in a demonstration for a group of visiting schoolchildren. It's humiliating. It's absurd. It involves stun guns. Alan is tossed in the face. Stu is tossed in the shoulder. Phil tries to leave and is tackled. The scene is both horrifying and hilarious, and when it's over, they're even more disoriented. No closer to finding Doug. Then, out of nowhere, the story turns again. They open the trunk of their police cruiser. Inside is a man. Naked. Screaming. Furious. And armed with a crowbar. He explodes out of the trunk in a whirlwind of curses and flailing limbs, attacking them with terrifying speed. Then he vanishes, leaving behind bruises, chaos, and one more riddle. That man, they soon learn, is Mr. Chow, a flamboyant gangster with a violent streak and a vendetta. He believes the guys stole something from him the night before, $80,000 to be exact, and now he wants it back. And he's not alone. He has men, guns, and a grudge. The tiger, they realize, might be the key. They remember it was in their suite. Somehow, it was part of all this. And then the last piece clicks. The tiger belongs to Mike Tyson. Yes, that Mike Tyson. They return to the suite, and there he is, calm and massive, waiting for them with a piano and a punch that drops Phil instantly. He wants his tiger back. No. No more games. The journey to return the tiger becomes its own side quest. The three friends load it into the car, drugged, dazed, and terrifying, and try to drop it off at Tyson's mansion. On the way, the tiger wakes up, destroys the car, and nearly kills them. But they make it. Barely. Their car is totaled. They're bruised and battered. And Doug is still gone. But at last, they're beginning to see the outline of what happened. There was a drug deal, a robbery, a wedding, a tiger, a police car, a missing tooth. And somewhere, tangled in all of it, is their friend. They've uncovered bits and pieces, glimpses of a night that spiraled far beyond anything they could have imagined. But the center of the storm remains hidden. And so they keep going, because time is running out, and the road to answers is still littered with clues they haven't yet recognized. They've lost the car, the tiger nearly killed them, and their heads are still filled with empty echoes from a night they can't remember. But the sun keeps climbing over Las Vegas, relentless and hot, exposing every mistake they've made. There's a sharpness now to every step Phil, Stu, and Alan take, like they've realized they're no longer just retracing a wild evening. They're chasing a life that could shatter if they fail to find their friend in time. Doug is out there somewhere, and the pieces are slowly starting to fall into place. They're back in the city now, the police cruiser long gone, replaced by aching legs and an urgency that makes every new lead feel like a thread pulled from a fraying rope. As they wander through the wreckage of their previous night, they discover that Mr. Chow, the manic man who exploded from their trunk, isn't just a bizarre footnote in their blackout. He's the storm itself. And he's not done with them. He finds them. Again. This time dressed impeccably, flanked by two gunmen, holding court with the kind of fury that demands attention. Chow believes they have his $80,000. The money that was stolen during a drug-fueled haze they no longer remember. He makes a deal. Return the money, and he'll return Doug. It's a ransom exchange, wrapped in confusion. The problem is, the guys have no idea where the money is. They don't remember stealing anything. But the clock is ticking, and the wedding isn't waiting. Alan, desperate to help, remembers something. A vague image. A faint memory. Counting cards. Blackjack. A casino. Maybe, just maybe, they gambled away the money. Or won it. They're not even sure. But it's the only lead they have. So they head to the tables. And suddenly, something remarkable happens. Alan, of all people, becomes a kind of savant. He's odd. He's unpredictable. But numbers stick to him. Patterns emerge. He counts cards with frightening precision, his eyes scanning the table like a machine hiding inside a man-child's body. Stu and Phil back him up. Drinks are ordered. Chips are stacked. The lights blur, and time slows. The floor beneath them becomes a battlefield. They win. Over and over. Until the $80,000 is in their hands. They meet Chow at a rendezvous point, a rooftop. The tension is thick, the sky burning down orange over the city. They bring the money. He brings Doug. Only it isn't Doug. It's another man entirely. A different Doug. Black Doug, as he calls himself. A drug dealer. A mistake. Chow laughs, delighted at the chaos he's caused, and vanishes again into the night with his men and the money. The guys are left holding a stranger. And still no groom. Defeat settles over them like dust. Phil calls Tracy, Doug's fiancée, and finally confesses. Everything. The bachelor party. The drugs. The missing groom. The police. The tiger. The wedding in 2 hours. They've failed. There's no salvaging it. The truth lands like a weight, and for a moment it all feels lost. But then comes clarity. A single, offhand comment from Black Doug shifts everything. He mentions the roof. How easy it is to forget people on rooftops. And suddenly, like lightning through fog, it clicks. They left him on the roof. Doug never left the hotel. He's been there the entire time. Stranded. Alone. Sunburned and dehydrated, lying on a mattress under the burning sun, forgotten by his best friends while they tore through the city trying to find him. In all the madness, in all the clues and chaos, the truth had been waiting just above their heads. They rushed to the roof of Caesar's palace, their legs pounding, their breath ragged, racing against time itself. And there he is. Doug. Alive. Barely. Confused. But smiling through cracked lips. The reunion is messy and loud and filled with apologies. But it's real. The storm is over. Almost. They have just enough time to get him back. No cars. No money. No dignity left. Just 3 ruined men dragging their sunburned friend across the desert in a stolen police car and a wedding waiting with a crowd that knows nothing of what nearly didn't happen. They make it. Just barely. Doug walks down the aisle, dazed but present. Tracy smiles, radiant and forgiving. She doesn't ask questions. She doesn't need to. The look on Doug's face tells her everything, that he fought to get there. That his friends fought to bring him back. That the story doesn't need to be told. Not yet. But later. Oh, later. In the quiet aftermath, in the safety of the hotel room, they find the camera. The digital memory they didn't know they needed. Alan, ever the collector of chaos, has it tucked away. And what it contains is more than evidence. It's revelation. Photographs, blurry, wild, impossible, each one filling in the blanks like puzzle pieces falling into place. They see it all. The rooftop toast. The dancing. The tiger. The wedding. Chow. The police. The mayhem. Each frame is a frozen moment from a night that nearly destroyed them. And they laugh. Not because it's funny, exactly, but because laughter is the only way to survive it. To admit that sometimes the wildest parts of life are the ones that teach you who your friends really are. They make a pact. One look at the photos. No copies. Then they delete them forever. Because some stories don't belong on Instagram. Some memories are too dangerous to keep. And as the final image fades, they're not just 4 guys recovering from the worst hangover of their lives. They're something more. A wolf pack. Forged not by celebration, but by survival. And the night that tried to tear them apart ends up being the one that binds them forever. In the chaos of bloodshot mornings and fractured memories, among missing grooms and stolen tigers, the soul of the story doesn't lie in the events themselves, but in the strange, unraveling journey of the 4 men at its center, 3 who must remember, and 1 who was never even there to forget. Each of them arrives in Las Vegas wearing a version of who they think they are. But when the sun rises and the night falls apart, those versions peel away like sunburnt skin. What's left is the truth. And it's often messy, hilarious, and far more human than they'd ever imagined. Phil is the first face you notice. Charismatic, confident, the kind of man who calls the shots before anyone else has time to speak. He's the guy with the sunglasses on before the sun even rises, who treats Vegas like a second language. He doesn't hate his life, not exactly, but there's a tension in him, a coiled energy that suggests he's grown tired of being who he's supposed to be. He's a husband, a father, a teacher who lies to his wife so he can take field trip money and gamble with it. His charm covers up the restlessness. Vegas, for Phil, isn't about escape, it's about rebirth. A night away from structure. a glimpse of who he might have been in another life, or who he wishes he still could be. But when it all collapses, when the night evaporates and leaves only aftermath, he's forced to lead, not just in revelry, but in responsibility. And that's where his Rayol arc begins. Phil becomes more than the smooth talker. He becomes the heartbeat of the mission. Not because he wants to be, but because someone has to be. When he stands under the desert sun, calling Doug's fiancée to confess they've lost the groom, there's no bravado left. Just a man who knows the weight of his own mistakes. And then there's Stu, the dentist, the pushover, the one who begins the story trapped in a relationship that smothers him in silence. Stu has been playing it safe for so long that he's forgotten what courage even feels like. Every decision he makes is double-checked against someone else's expectations. His girlfriend, Melissa, is more of a warden than a partner. And somewhere deep down, he knows it. But it takes a lost night in Vegas to shake him awake. Stu's transformation is subtle, but it's profound. He begins the story cautious, skeptical, always scanning for consequences. But somewhere between pulling a tiger's tooth and waking up married to a stripper, he begins to feel the first crack of liberation. That marriage, accidental and absurd as it seems, becomes more than a punchline. It's a mirror. It shows him the kind of person he could be if he stopped living on someone else's terms. And when he finally tells Melissa off, calls her out, finally stands up and ends the toxic loop he's been stuck in, it isn't an outburst. It's an exhale. Years of submission lifted in a single, furious breath. By the end, Stu is still nervous, still a little lost, but now he's moving under his own power. He's no longer the man who needs permission to live. Doug, strangely, is the calmest of them all. And yet he's the one around whom the entire story spins. For most of the journey, he's absent, physically removed, baking on a hotel roof while the others tear through Las Vegas in a panic. But even in his absence, Doug's importance is undeniable. He's the glue. The reason they're all there in the first place. His disappearance forces the others to confront not just their friendship, but the selves they've been hiding behind. Doug doesn't have a dramatic arc. He doesn't need one. His role is quieter, foundational. And when he's finally rescued, sunburned and smiling, he doesn't yell. He doesn't blame. He forgives them with a laugh and a shrug, as if somehow he knew they needed this more than he did. But none of them could have predicted Alan. He's not just the wild card. He's the wild card who reshuffles the entire deck. At first glance, Alan is a misfit. A walking contradiction. He's both childlike and dangerously unpredictable. He operates on a wavelength no one else can quite understand. He carries a man purse, references wolf packs, and introduces himself like he's always auditioning for something that doesn't exist. But Alan is more than comic relief. He's the film's strange, cracked soul. There's something disarmingly pure about him, even when he's doing the most outrageous things. He doesn't lie. He doesn't manipulate. He simply is. And in a group full of men wearing masks, hiding from their dissatisfaction, their obligations, their fears, Alan shows up as his whole, unapologetic self. He may be the one who accidentally drugged them all, but he's also the one who holds them together when things fall apart. What Alan brings is something the others didn't even realize they were missing: loyalty without condition. He doesn't judge. He doesn't compare. He sees them not for who they pretend to be, but for who they actually are, and he accepts them. That moment on the rooftop, when he makes his speech about becoming a wolf pack of 4, is both absurd and oddly profound. Because beneath the ridiculous phrasing is something sincere. A desire to belong. To be loved. To be part of something greater. And in that moment, the others stop seeing him as a burden. They start seeing him as family. Even the side characters, brief as their appearances may be, serve the journey. Jade, the stripper Stu accidentally marries, is not the stereotype we expect. She's grounded. kind, sharp. She doesn't mock the situation, she navigates it with grace. In her, Stu sees not chaos, but clarity. A woman who might understand him more in one night than Melissa did in years. Mr. Chow, on the other hand, is pure madness. A walking embodiment of the city's chaos, he's unpredictable, flamboyant, and terrifyingly intelligent. He's not a villain in the traditional sense, he's more like a whirlwind. A test. His role isn't just to antagonize the main characters, it's to shake them out of complacency, to challenge their grip on reality. Even Mike Tyson, in his brief but unforgettable cameo, becomes part of the surreal moral landscape. His presence is a reminder that reality is flexible in this world, that actions have consequences, even if they arrive in the form of a heavyweight punch to the jaw. What makes these characters work isn't that they're exaggerated, though many of them are. It's that beneath the madness, they're deeply human. Flawed. Searching. Each of them arrives in Vegas expecting something they can control, and each of them leaves having learned that life doesn't offer that kind of certainty. Instead, it offers moments, accidents, revelations. The brilliance lies in how those moments change them. Phil comes back from the edge, realizing that thrill for thrill's sake isn't enough, that loyalty, that friendship, carries a weight he hadn't appreciated. Stu, finally free of Melissa, begins to rediscover the joy of choosing his own life. Doug, forever grateful, knows that the men who almost lost him ended up finding themselves. And Alan doesn't change. Not really. He doesn't need to. What changes is the way the others see him. By the end, he's not just the weird guy they tolerated. He's the one they trust. The one who saved the receipts. The one who counted the cards. The one who, in his own bizarre way, held the group together. Because sometimes the person least like you is the one who reminds you who you really are. Together, these four don't just survive a disastrous night, they evolve. Their journey isn't just about recovering lost memories. It's about stripping away the things that no longer fit. The relationships. The lies. The illusions of control. What's left is messy, ridiculous, a little bruised, but real. And that's what makes this story unforgettable. Not the tiger, not the rooftop, not even the missing tooth. It's the way a schoolteacher, a dentist, a groom, and a man-child became something else entirely. Not just friends, but a wolf pack. Even if they didn't know they needed one. There are movies that come into the world with the clean precision of a studio blueprint, carefully plotted, pre-approved, trimmed of risk. And then there are those like The Hangover, born not from cautious planning but from chaos, instinct, and a few lucky accidents that ended up rewriting the rulebook. What started as a mid-budget comedy with a largely unknown cast and a ridiculous premise turned, almost inexplicably, into a global phenomenon. And the story of how it got there is as strange, funny, and unpredictable as the film itself. It all began with a lost groom and a desert hangover. But behind the scenes, something more quietly wild was brewing. For starters, no one expected it to work. When Todd Phillips first pitched the film, it didn't scream box office gold. The premise sounded absurd, even to executives used to greenlighting stoner comedies. A groom goes missing in Vegas after a blackout night, and three friends retrace their steps to find him? The pitch leaned more toward farce than film history. But Phillips believed in it. And he wanted to make it real, not just funny, but immersive. So he chose to shoot it like a mystery, dress it up in the tropes of thrillers and heist films, and let the comedy arise from the absurdity of ordinary guys thrown into a fever dream. He also made a gamble, perhaps the strangest and most brilliant of them all. He cast relatively unknown actors in all the lead roles. Bradley Cooper was best known at the time as that jerk from Wedding Crashers. Ed Helms was still the guy from The Daily Show and The Office. Zach Galifianakis was barely a blip, more of a cult stand-up comedian than a bankable star. And Justin Bartha, the missing groom, had a few credits but no big splash. The studio pushed for more famous names. Jack Black, Paul Rudd, even Jonah Hill were all floated at one point. But Phillips pushed back. He didn't want celebrity egos. He wanted fresh energy, actors who didn't come with expectations. It was a rare risk, and it paid off in ways no one saw coming. But casting wasn't the only strange element. The production itself, shot in the blinding heat of Las Vegas and the barren outskirts of California, was filled with oddities that blurred the line between fiction and reality. That tiger in the bathroom? It was real. For certain scenes, a live tiger was actually brought into the suite, with professional handlers standing just outside the frame. The actors, understandably, were on edge. Zach Galifianakis in particular was nervous. He later admitted he tried not to make eye contact with the animal. The crew used a mixture of CGI and practical effects for close encounters, but the moment where the tiger roars in the bathroom? That happened. And the reaction on the actors' faces? Entirely genuine. But why a tiger in the first place? Believe it or not, that idea was inspired by a real story Phillips had once heard. A bachelor party that ended with someone breaking into a zoo and waking up with a tiger in their hotel room. It sounded urban legend absurd. Which, of course, made it perfect. Then came Mike Tyson. Casting him wasn't part of the original plan. But one night, Phillips was at a party in Vegas, and who should walk in but Tyson himself, singing along to Phil Collins' In the Air Tonight. Phillips saw the moment and knew, that's the scene. And it made it into the film almost verbatim. Tyson singing, unexpected, off-key, and entirely himself. When he agreed to appear, the crew rewrote entire sequences just to make space for him. Tyson later admitted he didn't remember filming the scene. He was, as he put it, in a bad place then. But the appearance marked a strange turning point in his public persona. It was the moment the world started seeing him as more than just a boxer. It was bizarre. It was surreal. It was perfect. The weirdness didn't stop there. During one of the rooftop scenes, Galifianakis had to deliver the now famous wolf pack speech. He wrote part of it himself, including the awkward line about how he once thought of himself as a lone wolf. The monologue was so bizarre, so strangely poetic, that the cast couldn't keep a straight face. Several takes were ruined by off-camera giggles. The version in the film is stitched together from fragments, because no one could make it through the whole thing without cracking up. And that baby, the one Alan carries around in a satchel like a deranged marsupial? His name was Grant. At least, one of them was. There were actually 3 babies on set, rotated based on time limits and temperament. One of them became so attached to Galifianakis that he would reach for him between takes. Galifianakis, always playing to the moment, began improvising baby-themed jokes into scenes, some of which made the final cut. But perhaps the most unexpected moment was the missing tooth. Ed Helms, who plays Stu, didn't just wear prosthetic makeup to show a gap where his tooth should be. That gap? It was real. He's missing a permanent incisor due to a dental implant he received as a child. So instead of using special effects, Helms had his dental implant temporarily removed for the shoot. That level of commitment, along with the constant fear of damaging the exposed post, added a layer of real discomfort to his performance. And then there was Mr. Chow. Ken Jeong wasn't originally written to be, well, that. His character was in the script, yes, but Jeong took it to another universe entirely. The idea to jump out of a car trunk naked was his suggestion. When he pitched it, the room went silent. Then Phillips smiled. And so it was done. No body double. No stuntman. That was Jeong, in all his glory, leaping into cinematic madness. The moment shocked audiences and became one of the film's most unforgettable scenes. It also cemented Jeong's place in the Comedy Hall of Fame. The hotel they shot in, Caesar's Palace, was a character of its own. Unlike most productions, which use replicas or sets, The Hangover was filmed in actual rooms, lobbies, and hallways of the real casino. This meant the crew had to deal with real tourists, real gamblers, and real distractions. Scenes were often interrupted by fans yelling, "Cut!" thinking they were part of a flash mob or prank. Security was constantly clearing hallways. But somehow, the crew pushed through. And the photos at the end? Those weren't staged in advance. The decision to include them came during post-production. The filmmakers realized that audiences would be desperate to see the night they just spent 2 hours imagining. So they gathered the cast, even after principal photography had ended, and staged the wildest, most unhinged photos they could imagine. They locked themselves in a suite, brought in makeup artists, props, extras, and spent a feverish weekend recreating the lost night in pictures. The result? A montage that's arguably more iconic than any scene in the film. But for all its madness, the real twist is how small the budget was. The Hangover was made for just over $30 million, a modest sum even by 2009 standards. It had no major stars, no built-in franchise, no guaranteed audience. It was, by all accounts, a gamble. And then it hit theaters. And exploded. Audiences didn't just laugh, they howled. Word of mouth spread like wildfire. People saw it twice, 3 times. Quoted it endlessly. The movie made over $460 million worldwide, becoming the highest-grossing R-rated comedy of all time at that point. It spawned sequels, merchandise, Halloween costumes, and bachelor party traditions that echoed long after the credits rolled. It tapped into something that no one had seen coming. Not just the appeal of outrageous comedy, but the thrill of mystery, of piecing together a night gone wrong, of watching relatable characters fall apart in the most entertaining way possible. Years later, even the actors reflect on it with disbelief. Bradley Cooper, now an Oscar-nominated star, once said, "That movie changed all our lives. We didn't know it at the time. We were just trying to make it through each day without laughing too hard to ruin a take." Zach Galifianakis, who became an overnight icon, recalled, "I figured it was just another weird little comedy that might get lost. I never imagined people would call me Alan in public for the rest of my life." And Todd Phillips? He watched his low-budget comedy about a lost groom become a cultural milestone, and used that clout to pivot into darker, bolder projects, including, eventually, Joker. But The Hangover remains a lightning-in-a-bottle moment. A story so absurd it couldn't possibly happen, except maybe, just maybe, it did. Because somewhere out there, there's probably a bachelor party that woke up the same way, with a tiger in the bathroom, a baby in the closet, and no idea how it all went so wrong. And maybe that's the strangest fact of all. Not that the movie was made, but that it somehow, brilliantly, ridiculously, captured something real. There's something unsettling about waking up in a strange place, your mind blank, your body aching, and the world around you rearranged like a puzzle you don't remember building. That moment of disorientation, the fog between what was and what is, carries a raw, strangely universal fear. It's the anxiety of not knowing what you've done, or who you were while doing it. And that's precisely where the story begins, not just for the characters, but for us. And in the hangover of it all, between the missing memories and the found truths, we remember why we laughed. Because underneath the madness, we saw ourselves. Sometimes a movie gets made with precision, engineered like a Swiss watch, perfect casting, bulletproof structure, clean lines. And sometimes, a movie explodes into being like a firework launched from a rooftop at midnight, by accident, through a haze of half-memories and dumb luck. That's how The Hangover came to life. Not planned. Not polished. But pulled together with an energy so strange and combustible that even the people making it didn't quite know what they had until the world watched it burn its way into comedy legend. From the beginning, Todd Phillips had a feeling. There was something about the script, originally written by John Lucas and Scott Moore, then reworked by Phillips and Jeremy Garelick, that just felt dangerous in all the right ways. A bachelor party gone wrong wasn't a new idea. But this version? A mystery wrapped in amnesia, with no big stars, no guaranteed box office pull, and a tiger in a hotel bathroom? This was something else. Something oddly mythic. Like Memento got drunk with Animal House and left a Polaroid behind. But making it, that was the real madness. It started with the cast. Or rather, the lack of names. The studio, initially unsure about the project, pushed for marquee actors. Names that would sell tickets and look good on a poster. But Phillips pushed back. He didn't want fame. He wanted chemistry. He wanted actors who could become these guys without bringing in the weight of expectation. Bradley Cooper was charming but not yet a star. Mostly known for supporting roles, he hadn't headlined anything this size. Ed Helms had just started making waves on The Office, but was still more known as a correspondent from The Daily Show. Zach Galifianakis was a wild card, more of a cult comedy figure with a beard and a piano than a mainstream anything. Together, they didn't look like a blockbuster trio. But they felt real. Authentic. Slightly broken in different ways. That was the key. Justin Bartha, the groom, had arguably the toughest job. He had to make the audience care about someone they barely saw, someone whose absence drove the entire plot. "I joked that I had the easiest shoot," Bartha said in an interview, "but in a weird way, the most pressure. Because everything hinged on people giving a damn about where I was." But casting wasn't the only unconventional choice. Phillips wanted everything to feel grounded. Despite the absurdity of the plot, he wanted the world to be tangible. So they filmed in real locations, real hotel rooms, real streets, real Vegas heat. Caesar's Palace wasn't a replica. It was the actual, functioning casino. That meant the crew had to navigate real guests, real gambling tables, and a lot of awkward interruptions. Bradley Cooper recalled trying to shoot scenes while tourists stood just off camera, taking photos and yelling lines from The Office at Ed Helms. Security had to clear entire floors. Extras sometimes wandered off to gamble. One scene had to be res-hot 3 times because an Elvis impersonator refused to stop singing nearby. But the real madness was the suite. That gorgeous, over-the-top hotel villa? Not a set. A real room. Which meant they had one shot to trash it, one shot to build the chaos that would greet the characters when they woke up. The props department spent hours positioning every overturned chair, shattered lamp, and misplaced chicken. Yes, there was a real chicken. Its name was Susan. It had a handler. It had a contract. And then came the tiger. When the script called for a tiger in the bathroom, most assumed it would be CGI or animatronic. But Phillips insisted on using a real tiger for the reaction shots. The production brought in a trained Bengal tiger, handled by professionals, kept behind plexiglass in most scenes, and only allowed near the actors for tightly controlled moments. The first time Zach Galifianakis walked into the bathroom and saw the tiger lying in the bathtub, the fear on his face? Completely real. "We weren't acting," he later said. "That was just our souls trying to leave our bodies." But the most surreal element of the entire shoot might have been Mike Tyson. His role wasn't originally in the script. But one night, Todd Phillips attended a party in Vegas. Tyson was there. And he was singing. Badly. To Phil Collins. It was such an arresting image, this former heavyweight champion softly crooning "In the Air Tonight," that Phillips knew it had to be in the movie. He approached Tyson that night and asked if he'd want to be in a film. Tyson agreed instantly. The next week, he was on set. According to Phillips, Tyson was both charming and chaotic. He hadn't read the script. He had no idea what the movie was about. But he showed up. He delivered lines. He punched Cooper in the face, lightly, but enough to make everyone wince. And yes, he really did insist on keeping the scene where he belts out Phil Collins. "That's how I enter the room," he said. "That's my vibe." Tyson later admitted he was pretty high during filming. He'd been dealing with addiction, and the shoot came during a particularly rough patch. But the movie ended up changing something in him. It softened his image, gave the world a new lens through which to view him, not just as a fighter, but as a figure of unexpected humor. And he credited the film with helping him take his first steps toward recovery. Then there was the baby. Carlos, or Tyler, as we later learn, was played by a rotating trio of infants. Filming with babies is notoriously difficult, due to strict labor laws and unpredictable behavior. But one baby in particular bonded with Galifianakis. During breaks, he'd cradle the child and whisper strange lullabies. The crew took to calling them the bearded nanny. Galifianakis also improvised a line about the baby's strong grip, referencing an off-camera moment when the baby accidentally latched onto him mid-take and wouldn't let go. The laugh was real, and so was the panic. And then, of course, there's the missing tooth. Ed Helms didn't use makeup or a prosthetic for his infamous dental gap. He actually had a dental implant removed for the shoot. As a child, he was born without a permanent incisor and had worn a fake tooth for years. For the film, he worked with his dentist to safely remove it for filming. Every time he smiles, wincing with the horror of what's missing, that's the real deal. The police station scene, where the guys are tossed in front of a classroom of kids, was another surprise. Those weren't actors playing the children. They were real kids. Real reactions. And the scene was shot in a single day, with minimal rehearsal. Helms said that getting tossed, even with fake prods, was still one of the weirdest experiences of his life. But the strangest and most brilliant addition came late in the process. The photo montage at the end. Because what The Hangover does, beneath all the drunken gags and raunchy chaos, is hold up a mirror to that part of ourselves that wants to lose control, and then has to deal with the consequences. Critically speaking, it's easy, tempting even, to dismiss the film as just another buddy comedy, a wild night gone wrong wrapped in toilet humor and absurdity. But to stop there would be to miss what made it resonate so deeply, not just with audiences, but with the culture itself. The story isn't simply about memory loss. It's about identity, responsibility, and the fragile masks men wear when they think no one is watching. Or, in this case, when they can't remember being seen at all. The first major event that demands deeper reflection is the blackout. That single narrative device, the complete erasure of the night before, is a stroke of brilliance. It transforms the story from a traditional comedy into something closer to a detective thriller. Each moment in the aftermath becomes a clue, every smashed chair and bruised face a breadcrumb. Structurally, it flips the genre on its head. Instead of building toward a climax, the movie starts at the end and unspools backward. The characters already did the wild things. Now they must figure out what they were, and why. That reversal invites us to experience the story in real time, not through expectation, but discovery. It's a mystery where the perpetrators are also the investigators. And each revelation, no matter how absurd, a tiger in the bathroom, a baby in the closet, a hospital bracelet on a wrist, adds to the tension rather than diffusing it. There's no traditional villain here. The antagonist is the night itself, or maybe the version of ourselves that emerges when no one is accountable. From a thematic standpoint, this plays into one of the film's most compelling ideas, the fragmentation of masculine identity. Phil, Stu, Doug, and Alan aren't caricatures. They're archetypes, representations of the various pressures modern men feel, exaggerated just enough to be funny, but grounded enough to be familiar. Phil is the man who pretends to have it all figured out. A leader. Confident. But underneath the sunglasses and swagger is someone suffocating in suburban obligation. He's not escaping to Vegas to be wild. He's trying to remember who he was before he started pretending. Stu is the overachiever trapped by fear. He's stuck in a toxic relationship, too afraid to speak up, too conditioned to seek approval at every turn. His arc isn't about getting drunk or married to a stripper. It's about realizing he has the right to choose his own happiness. His eventual rebellion, leaving Melissa, embracing his mistake marriage to Jade, is less about romance and more about reclaiming agency. And then there's Alan. The weirdo. The wild card. The outcast who doesn't play by any rules because, as it turns out, he never learned them. But he's also the most honest. The most loyal. Alan doesn't hide behind social codes. He doesn't pretend to be cooler or smarter or better than he is. In many ways, he becomes the glue that holds the group together, accidentally and then intentionally. So when he gives his now iconic wolf pack speech, it lands not because it's funny, though it is, but because it's painfully sincere. He isn't just trying to be part of the group. He's telling them that, for the first time, he feels like he belongs. And that is the core emotional resonance of the story. Men learning not just how to find their friend, but how to find themselves in one another. Another critical event, often overlooked in favor of its comedic shock value, is the scene with Mike Tyson. At first, it seems like pure gimmick. A celebrity cameo inserted for laughs. But it's more than that. Tyson's presence, his tiger, his casual threat of violence, all serve to underscore the surreal nature of the night they're trying to piece together. Tyson, once a symbol of unbridled aggression, now appears tame, calm, even humorous. It reflects the same transformation the characters are undergoing, a wild past confronted in the daylight, forced to make peace with the people they are now. Even the tiger serves a symbolic purpose. It's not just a pet, it's a manifestation of their recklessness, a literal predator lurking in the quiet aftermath of their actions. Returning it becomes more than a side quest, it's penance. And when Tyson punches Phil square in the face, it feels deserved. A slap from the universe, a reminder that not all consequences can be outrun. The confrontation with Mr. Chow is another moment ripe with thematic depth. Chow isn't just chaos incarnate. He represents what the characters fear most, the part of their night that cannot be controlled or explained. He's unpredictable, flamboyant, violently free. And yet, he's also the only one who seems to have enjoyed the night for what it was. Where the main characters wake up horrified by their behavior, Chow wears his insanity like armor. He's liberated by his absurdity. And in that contrast, we see the true divide between how society expects men to behave and what they secretly crave, to let go without judgment. And that brings us to the roof. Doug, sunburned and dehydrated, lying alone above the very hotel where his friends have spent days searching for him. The metaphor here is elegant. They were always close, but not looking in the right place. Their friendship, their understanding of each other, was surface level. Polite. Casual. But real friendship, the movie suggests, requires effort. Vulnerability. A willingness to climb to the uncomfortable places. Finding Doug isn't just a resolution to the plot. It's a moment of clarity. The chaos was necessary. The confusion, the absurdity, the pain, it all led to this, a rediscovery of something deeper than laughter or shared drinks. Brotherhood. That's why the film's final moments don't dwell on explanations. No one needs to recount the night. They lived it. They survived it. And now they understand each other in ways they couldn't have before. From a critical perspective, The Hangover was met with an odd mix of reactions. Some hailed it as a revolution in modern comedy, a sharp, genre-bending ride that balanced outrageous humor with grounded character work. Others dismissed it as juvenile, loud, and pandering. But over time, the film carved out a space far larger than anyone expected. Not just because of box office numbers, or quotable one-liners, or sequels, but because it tapped into something quietly radical. It treated male vulnerability as a punchline, and then flipped it into a truth. It allowed men to cry, to panic, to be afraid and unsure and ashamed, and still be heroes. It suggested that friendship isn't just about fun. It's about being willing to go through hell for someone who might not even remember it in the morning. That's why the final photo montage hits so hard. After everything, after the tiger and the wedding and the police station and the chase through Vegas, It's the photos that make it real. They're chaotic, grainy, ridiculous. But they're proof. Not of what happened, but of who they became in the process. You can hear them laughing. Not just because it's funny, but because the truth is sometimes so outrageous, so painful, so absurd, that laughter is the only honest response. In the end, The Hangover doesn't just entertain. It reveals. It shows us what it looks like when control slips away. When the masks fall off. When the night ends and the morning comes and you have to figure out who you were while no one was watching. It's a comedy, yes. But like all the best comedies, it's also a confession. Initially, there were no plans to show the missing night. The filmmakers thought it would be funnier to leave it to the audience's imagination. But in test screenings, viewers kept asking, "What happened?" So the team decided to shoot a rapid-fire series of Polaroid-style photos to answer that question. They did it in a single weekend, holed up in a hotel room, with props, costumes, fake tattoos, and a lot of fake bodily fluids. Many of those photos were improvised on the spot. Some were so outrageous that the studio initially tried to cut them. One photo, showing a character receiving an intimate piercing, was almost too much. But Phillips argued for it, saying, "If we're going to go this far, we have to go there." And so they did. Those final moments, stitched together with a pounding rock soundtrack, turned out to be the cherry on top. They made audiences scream with laughter, then sit in stunned silence. Not because they were graphic, but because they made the whole film real. Suddenly, everything made sense. And the reaction was explosive. The Hangover premiered in 2009 to modest expectations. Warner Brothers had positioned it as a summer comedy. Fun, quick, disposable. But word of mouth ignited like wildfire. People went once, then brought friends. Then again. Quotes spread. Memes exploded. And the cast, once unknowns, were catapulted into the stratosphere. The film made over $460 million worldwide on a $35 million budget. It became the highest-grossing R-rated comedy of all time. Critics who had initially written it off as frat boy nonsense went back and reconsidered. Filmmakers studied it. Studios tried to copy it. Sequels were rushed into production. But nothing, not even the follow-ups, could recapture the raw, lightning-in-a-bottle energy of that first film. Because it was never supposed to be what it became. It was messy. Improvised. Held together by instinct and duct tape and one very confused tiger. But in that chaos, something remarkable happened. A film that should have been forgotten became unforgettable. A story about a blackout night somehow became a cultural spotlight. And the actors who woke up in a hotel suite with no memory found themselves remembered forever. Not for what they did, but for how they made the world laugh, with just the right mix of truth, terror, and absurdity. And maybe that's the most perfect hangover of all. Las Vegas doesn't whisper. It doesn't lull you in with charm or elegance or slow-burning grace. Vegas roars. It flashes. It seduces and devours in the same breath. It sells illusion as truth and chaos as adventure. And in the world of The Hangover, Las Vegas isn't just a backdrop. It's the antagonist, the accomplice, and the twisted mirror reflecting every character's darkest, wildest impulse. From the moment the silver Mercedes slices through the Nevada desert and that glittering skyline comes into view, the city becomes a character in its own right. It's not just where the story happens. It is the story. Because only in a place like this could reality collapse so thoroughly, leaving behind a trail of missing grooms, stolen tigers, and scattered memories like breadcrumbs across a neon wasteland. The production didn't fake Vegas. It embraced it. Director Todd Phillips insisted on shooting on location, embedded deep within the city's maze of grandeur and grime. Caesar's Palace wasn't recreated on a soundstage. It was used as is, in all its decadent, over-the-top glory. The sprawling marble halls, the gold fixtures, the impossible scale of everything. It doesn't just look like Vegas, it feels like Vegas. Overwhelming. Dizzying. Slightly unreal. And that's the point. Because when the trio wakes up in that obliterated suite, sunlight pouring through broken windows, furniture destroyed, a tiger snarling somewhere in the bathroom, the viewer is already disoriented. The luxury of the setting clashes violently with the chaos of the scene. This is no longer a sanctuary of indulgence. It's a war zone. The suite, once pristine, becomes a crime scene of excess. And every smashed vase, every beer bottle, every piece of detritus tells a story the characters don't remember yet. Cinematographer Lawrence sure captures this decay with quiet brilliance. He doesn't over-stylize. He lets the camera glide slowly through destruction, treating each piece of wreckage as evidence. There are no sweeping dolly shots or grand cinematic tricks. The camera is patient, curious, as if it too is trying to figure out what the hell happened the night before. Lighting becomes one of the film's most subtle tools. The daytime shots are washed in harsh, unforgiving brightness. The sun is not a friend in this movie. It's a spotlight, a brutal force that reveals everything the darkness tried to hide. Every wrinkle, every bruise, every regret is on full display. When Phil steps onto the hotel balcony and winces at the light, it's not just a hangover, it's exposure. Shame in daylight. In contrast, the night scenes are warm, saturated, hypnotic. Vegas at night is golden and glowing, promising and untrustworthy. It lulls you into forgetting that morning always comes. When the gang first arrives, dressed in suits and smiles, walking into the casino like conquering heroes, the lighting flatters them. It makes them feel immortal. But that glow doesn't last. As their journey unfolds, the settings shift from opulent to absurd. There's the wedding chapel, bright with faux-stained glass and echoing Elvis. It's not just a location. It's a punchline, a symbol of how quickly things can spiral when the rules fall away. And yet, there's something quietly touching about it too. Stu's panic as he realizes he married a stripper becomes a moment of revelation, not just comedy. The setting, tacky as it is, forces a truth to surface. He's more himself here than he ever was in his controlling relationship back home. Then there's the police station. A stark, sterile place lit with fluorescent severity. The contrast is deliberate. Gone is the gold sheen of Vegas nightlife. Here, the real world creeps back in. Authority. Consequence. Embarrassment. Watching Phil, Stu, and Alan get tossed in front of a group of children isn't just hilarious. It's sobering. It's the world slapping them awake, one voltage shot at a time. The setting reinforces that shift. Cold. Unyielding. Real. And yet, the absurdity never quite leaves. They drive a stolen police car through the streets of Vegas, lights blazing, sirens screaming. The cinematography here tightens, switches to handheld in moments, heightening the sense of manic energy. The camera jolts with every swerve, every near miss. Vegas blurs in the windows, still glittering, still beautiful, but now twisted into something dangerous. One of the most striking sequences in the film takes place not in a bar or casino, but on a rooftop. It's where it begins and where it almost ends. That moment when the four friends toast under the stars, the city stretching infinitely below them, is more than a scenic view. It's a promise, a myth in the making. And the rooftop, with its rails and lights and empty sky, becomes a liminal space, suspended between their ordinary lives and whatever is about to happen. When we return to that same rooftop hours later, and find Doug sunburned, dazed, and laughing in disbelief, it hits differently. The setting hasn't changed. The skyline is the same. But they have. The rooftop is no longer a place of excitement. It's a graveyard of bad decisions. And yet, it's also a symbol of survival. He's alive. They made it. Sort of. The desert becomes another unexpected character. The scenes set outside of Vegas, dusty roads, wide horizons, unrelenting sun, offer a rare breath from the claustrophobia of the city. But that breath is laced with anxiety. The desert doesn't soothe. It mocks. It reminds the characters how small they are. When they meet Mr. Chow in the middle of nowhere, the emptiness around them mirrors their own confusion. There's nothing to hold on to. No structure. Just heat, sand, and the wild consequences of a night they can't explain. Even Mr. Chow's trunk becomes a kind of setting, a confined, bizarre space that suddenly explodes into action. When he erupts from it, naked and screaming, the scene is both shocking and spatially brilliant. It disrupts the stillness of the parking lot, throws the characters and the audience off balance. That's what the film does best. It uses space not just to contain action, but to shock it into motion. The costuming, too, adds to the story's atmosphere. As the film progresses, the characters' clothes degrade. Wrinkles deepen. Stains spread. What begins as crisp suits devolves into sweat-drenched, sunburn-revealing chaos. Alan, in particular, stands out with his satchel, his childlike T-shirt, and his expression of constant wonder. He looks like he wandered out of a different movie entirely, and in some ways, he did. He's not dressed for Vegas. He's dressed for a field trip to a place no one planned to visit. But it's in the smaller, quieter settings where the film finds unexpected weight. The elevator ride down from the suite. The casino bathroom. The nondescript hallway where Alan confesses he might have drugged them all. Each of these spaces is deliberately mundane. And yet, they're where the real character moments unfold. The film uses these neutral zones to contrast the chaos, to show us the men underneath the madness. Sound design and score also play subtle, crucial roles in building the atmosphere. The soundtrack blends classic rock with unexpected cues. When In the Air Tonight plays as Mike Tyson delivers his slow-motion punch, the moment becomes not just comedic, but operatic. The music elevates it from slapstick to legend. Similarly, the recurring use of pounding beats and sudden silences mirrors the rhythm of a hangover itself. Moments of clarity followed by jolts of confusion. There's a visual motif that recurs throughout the film: mirrors. Characters often catch glimpses of themselves in bathroom mirrors, hotel windows, car reflections. And every time, it's like they're seeing a stranger. That visual repetition underscores a central theme: the disconnect between who we think we are and who we might become under the right or wrong circumstances. And then there's the final sequence, the photo montage. No longer confined to traditional cinematography, the story bursts into snapshots. Blurry, raw, unapologetic. Each image is a setting unto itself. A bathroom. A dance floor. An alley. A dentist's chair. The fast-paced collage of stills becomes a cinematic device of its own, filling in the blanks, giving structure to the myth that the rest of the movie built up. It's not just a gimmick. It's a finale. A payoff. A full immersion into the world the film hinted at but never showed. When those final credits roll, the audience has been through a journey not just of plot, but of space. We've wandered the luxurious corridors of Caesar's palace. We've sweated in the desert. We've raced down the strip with sirens blaring. We've sat in dingy chapels, stood on sun-scorched rooftops, and stared into tigers' eyes. And somehow, through all of it, the settings haven't just held the story, they've shaped it. Because The Hangover isn't just a film about what happens when a bachelor party spirals out of control. It's a film about where it happens. About the environments we lose ourselves in. The places that pull the truth out of us whether we're ready or not. The rooms where masks fall off. The elevators where friendships change. The rooftops where memories vanish under starlight. Vegas was the only place this story could unfold. Loud, messy, glittering, empty, and somehow full of meaning. And when the sun finally sets, and the last picture is deleted, you're left with the strange feeling that maybe the city wasn't just a location. Maybe it was the fifth character all along. Some movie sets run like clockwork, tight schedules, crisp call times, a steady hum of control behind the chaos. The Hangover was not one of those sets. It wasn't just a film about unpredictable madness, it was made in the very spirit of it. Behind the scenes, there was a kind of giddy volatility hanging in the air, as if everyone involved knew they were walking the line between genius and disaster. And somehow, in that fragile balance, a modern comedy classic was born. It all began with a feeling. Director Todd Phillips didn't want to make just another raunchy comedy. He wanted to create something wild but grounded, absurd but strangely believable. A film that felt like a true mystery unraveling in real time, where every laugh was earned and every ridiculous twist was somehow tethered to something human. And for that, he needed the perfect storm of people. Not just actors who could be funny, but actors who could be real. He didn't go for the obvious choices. Instead of casting household names, he went with 3 leads who, at the time, didn't scream box office. Bradley Cooper wasn't yet a star. Ed Helms was mostly known for his work on The Daily Show and The Office. Zach Galifianakis was an underground stand-up comic known more for his awkward silences than punchlines. But Phillips saw something in them, something that couldn't be taught: chemistry. And that chemistry began to spark the moment they met. From the very first table read, it was clear that this wasn't going to be a stiff, over-rehearsed production. The cast clicked in a way that no one had quite predicted. They bounced off each other with a kind of rhythm that felt more like lifelong friends than newly assembled co-workers. They riffed. They ad-libbied. They laughed until they cried, often ruining takes but never breaking the connection. One of the first scenes to be shot was the infamous toast on the rooftop, the one where Alan, eyes wide and full of strange sincerity, delivers his now iconic wolf pack speech. That monologue? Galifianakis made most of it up. Phillips had written a basic outline, but told him to play with it, to make it awkward and personal. So Zach took a deep breath, cleared his throat, and began talking about how he once considered himself a lone wolf. The other actors tried to stay in character, but you can see it. Subtle twitches, near smiles, real effort not to crack. That was the tone of the entire shoot. Walk the line between the planned and the unpredictable. They shot for nearly 7 weeks, mostly in and around Las Vegas, using real locations instead of sets. That decision made everything harder, and better. Caesar's Palace, the heart of the film's chaos, wasn't just a facade. The crew filmed in real suites, real lobbies, real elevators. That meant working around hotel guests, security, noise, and an endless stream of interruptions. During one take, a group of tourists wandered into a shot, recognizing Ed Helms and shouting, "Nard Dog," his nickname from The Office. Another time, a wedding procession passed through the hallway mid-scene, completely oblivious to the cameras and boom mics. But the cast rolled with it. They learned to reset, to wait for breaks in the madness, and then snap back into character like nothing had happened. It was part of the vibe, Helms later said. If we were going to make a movie about chaos, we had to live in it. That chaos extended to the stunts. The car scenes, especially the ones involving the stolen police cruiser, were shot in the actual streets of downtown Las Vegas. That meant controlling traffic, working with city officials, and coordinating some seriously tight driving maneuvers. In one scene, the cruiser whips into a hotel driveway at high speed, nearly hitting a valet stand. The shot was real. And the crew only got 2 takes to pull it off before the casino insisted they clear the area. Then there was the tiger. Yes, it was real. For some of the close-up shots, the production used a trained Bengal tiger named Sugar. He had his own handler, his own trailer, and his own rules. The crew was instructed not to make sudden movements, not to shout, and definitely not to make eye contact unless necessary. During one scene, Galifianakis had to walk past the tiger in the bathroom. The trainer gave him specific instructions. Move slowly, keep your voice soft, don't show fear. Zach nodded, and then walked into the scene and, in typical fashion, immediately asked, "Does this tiger get residuals?" The trainer was not amused. But the shot worked, and the tiger remained, mostly, calm. The baby, Carlos, or rather Tyler, was another story. Filming with infants is always tricky. There are strict labor laws, limited hours, and the ever-present threat of a meltdown. The crew had 3 babies rotating in shifts. One of them, a boy named Grant, became particularly attached to Galifianakis. Between takes, Zach would rock him gently, hum songs, and tell him weird little stories. The bond was real. He was like my tiny comedy partner, Zach joked later. Only less judgmental than most adults. Ed Helms, meanwhile, went method in the strangest way. When his character wakes up missing a tooth, that wasn't makeup. Helms has a dental implant from a childhood injury. So he went to his dentist and had the implant removed for the duration of the shoot. The resulting gap is real, and it hurt like hell. It throbbed for weeks, he admitted. But the look was worth it. The same commitment ran through the rest of the crew. Todd Phillips encouraged improvisation at every turn. He wanted the actors to live in their scenes, not just recite them. That meant the script was constantly in flux. Lines changed. Reactions were genuine. If something didn't work, they scrapped it and tried again. The film was shaped as much in the moment as it was in the editing room. One particularly challenging moment came during the desert scenes with Mr. Chow. Jeong, always ready to go further than anyone expected, volunteered to jump out of the trunk completely naked. It wasn't in the script. But he pitched it to Phillips one morning, and the director blinked once, then said, "Let's do it." Jeong's only condition? No body double. He wanted it to be real. The crew prepped the shot carefully, clearing the area and prepping everyone for what was about to happen. When he exploded out of the trunk, screaming and flailing, the cast didn't have to fake their shock. That was the first and only take. Then there was Mike Tyson. His appearance was last minute. Phillips had met him at a party in Vegas where Tyson sang along to Phil Collins. That moment, so bizarre, so iconic, was immediately written into the script. Tyson agreed to join the film and showed up on set with almost no prep. He didn't even know who the cast was. But he nailed the scene. The punch he lands on Bradley Cooper was a soft jab, but it rattled Cooper enough to leave a mark. "Mike doesn't not hit hard," Cooper said. "Even when he's pretending." Tyson later confessed that he was struggling with substance abuse during the shoot. He barely remembered filming. But the movie, he said, helped him feel human again. It reminded people that he could laugh and be laughed at, without losing dignity. In post-production, the magic really came together. The photo montage, now one of the most iconic parts of the film, was a late addition. Originally, the night's events were never going to be shown. But test audiences wanted closure. So the team gathered the cast and spent a long weekend in a hotel room staging every outrageous event they'd hinted at in the story. They brought in props, costumes, even body doubles for the racier shots. Many of the photos were improvised. Some were shot in a single take. Others required elaborate makeup and choreography. One photo, showing a character in a compromising position with a champagne bottle, nearly got the film an NC-17 rating. The studio begged them to cut it. Phillips refused. "It's real," he said. "It's awful and funny, and exactly what this movie is." That photo stayed. And when the film was released, the world responded in kind. It wasn't supposed to be a phenomenon. It wasn't supposed to spawn sequels, merchandise, Halloween costumes. But it did. Because at its core, behind the tiger and the tasers and the toothless dentist, the movie captured something oddly beautiful. It captured friendship. Not the tidy, sentimental kind. The messy kind. The kind forged through disasters and panic and complete, unapologetic honesty. Not the tidy, sentimental kind. The messy kind. The kind forged through disasters and panic and complete, unapologetic honesty. The kind where you screw up, and someone still waiting at the curb when you do. Behind the scenes, The Hangover wasn't just made. It was lived. It was held together by trust, risk, laughter, and a willingness to go one step further than what felt safe. And maybe that's why it worked so well. Because the cast and crew weren't just making a movie. They were surviving one. Together. Sometimes, the wildest stories hide the deepest truths, not because they set out to teach a lesson, but because in their chaotic honesty, they peel back the layers we try so hard to keep in place. The Hangover, on its surface, is loud, messy, and absurd. It's a film built on blackout nights and improbable scenarios. But underneath all the madness, beneath the laughs and the lions and the missing tooth, there's something more subtle humming through it all. A quiet undercurrent of fear, identity, and the fragile bonds between people who are trying, desperately, to hold on to something real in a world that doesn't slow down for anyone. It's a story that begins, ironically, with forgetting. 3 men wake up in a hotel suite and remember nothing. Not the tiger. Not the baby. Not the fact that the groom is gone. And it's that absence, of memory, of clarity, of control, that becomes the film's true center. Because what they're really trying to recover isn't just the events of the night before. It's their sense of self. Who they were. Who they are. Who they might become once the haze lifts. The amnesia isn't just a plot device. It's the metaphor. A stand-in for the moments in life when we wake up and realize we've drifted, maybe for years. When we look around and wonder how we ended up where we are. Phil, Stu, and Alan aren't just piecing together a wild night. They're slowly confronting the distance between the people they pretend to be and the people they really are. That's the brilliance of the setup. It's a comedy of memory, but the real mystery is identity. Phil, the so-called leader of the group, wears confidence like armor. He's charming, quick with a joke, effortlessly in control, until he isn't. When the groom goes missing, when the night unravels, Phil doesn't step up. He panics. He hides. And through that unraveling, we see him for who he truly is. Not a fearless alpha, but a man drowning in the monotony of a life he no longer recognizes. He loves his family, sure. But there's a restlessness in him, a longing to escape the routine, if only for one weekend. Las Vegas becomes the symbol of that temptation. A playground for the version of himself he thinks he left behind. But the city doesn't give him freedom. It gives him consequence. Stu's journey is just as layered, though quieter. He starts the film handcuffed to a toxic relationship. Melissa, his girlfriend, controls his every move, dictates what he says, where he goes, who he's allowed to be. He lies to her constantly, not out of malice, but because he believes that's the only way to survive. That's Stu's cage. Not her, but the fear that he doesn't deserve better. So when he wakes up married to a stripper, it's not just played for laughs. It's the beginning of something seismic. He's horrified, yes, but not because of Jade. Because of what it says about him. That somewhere, deep inside, there's a version of Stu that wanted to break free. That chose this, even if he can't remember it. His eventual decision to end things with Melissa, to lean into the wild, impulsive chaos of his marriage to Jade, isn't just romantic, it's symbolic. It's the first time he reclaims his own narrative. The first time he stops editing himself for someone else. And then there's Alan. The wild card. The odd one out. The man-child in khakis and a satchel who seems to exist on a wavelength no one else can quite tune into. At first glance, Alan is comic relief. He's the walking punchline. The guy who drugs his friends by accident and carries a baby like a loaf of bread. But look closer, and there's something deeper underneath the weirdness. Alan is the soul of the film. He's not pretending to be someone he isn't. He's not posturing or hiding behind bravado. He's just Alan. Honest. Strange. Vulnerable in a way that most men are too scared to be. His obsession with creating a wolf pack isn't just a funny speech. It's a plea. A childlike hope that he might finally belong. And when the others stop laughing at him and start listening to him, something shifts. The group doesn't just survive the hangover. They become a pack. That's one of the film's most powerful themes, belonging. So many stories are about finding love or winning a prize. This one is about finding your people. The ones who will carry you through the worst nights, even if they don't remember doing it. That bond isn't forged in quiet moments. It's forged in disaster. In blood, sweat, tears, and tiger bites. Another theme that pulses through the film is masculinity, or more specifically, how modern men navigate it. Each character represents a different facet of the male experience, and the journey they take through Vegas isn't just physical, it's emotional. They're confronting what it means to be strong, to be loyal, to be vulnerable. They're learning, often painfully, that strength isn't loud. It's patient. That vulnerability isn't weakness. It's truth. Phil pretends he doesn't care. That nothing matters. But the moment he calls Doug's fiancée and confesses the truth, his voice cracking with guilt, we see the mask fall. He does care. He's just been afraid to admit it. Stu learns that being a good man doesn't mean being obedient. It means being honest. With himself. With others. His arc, from doormat to decision-maker, is one of the most satisfying in the film. And Alan? Alan teaches them all that the weirdest person in the room might be the most loyal. The most grounded. The one who sees things clearly when everyone else is lost in noise. Even the setting of Las Vegas becomes symbolic. It's the city of illusions. Of quick wins and big lies. A place where identity is fluid and reality bends. It's the perfect mirror for the characters' inner lives, chaotic, bright, and full of traps. And like any great mythic landscape, it tests them. It breaks them down. Then it gives them a choice, run from the truth or stumble through it, bruised and changed. The tiger, for instance, isn't just an animal. It's chaos made real. A physical manifestation of everything they unleashed the night before. It's beautiful, dangerous, and completely out of place, much like the characters themselves. And their journey to return it to Mike Tyson becomes a strange kind of atonement. A way of putting the pieces back together. The baby, too, is more than a punchline. It's a symbol of innocence dropped into the middle of destruction. The fact that Alan bonds with him, carries him, cares for him, says something profound. In a world gone insane, Alan finds something to protect. Something that gives him purpose. And then there's the photos. That final montage, those blurry, hilarious, shocking images that finally reveal the night we never saw, is more than a gimmick. It's the truth. The unfiltered, unapologetic record of everything they did. The memories they were too afraid to face. And by looking at them, by laughing at them, they reclaim their story. They don't hide from it. They embrace it. Tyson's casting was the stuff of legend. A last-minute idea sparked at a party where director Todd Phillips saw him singing along to Phil Collins in The Air Tonight. The image was too good not to use. Tyson agreed to appear and walked onto set with no script prep and a grin. He delivered the punch, literally. That became one of the film's most unforgettable moments. Later, he admitted he was going through a rough period during filming. "I didn't even really know what I was doing," he said. "But somehow, people saw a different side of me. And that helped me change." Jeong, who played Mr. Chow, brought pure unpredictability to the set. His infamous trunk scene, where he bursts out naked and screaming, was his idea. "I just said, what if he was completely naked?" Jeong recalled. Todd didn't even blink. He just said, "Let's shoot it." It was a gamble. But it worked. Jeong's fearless performance added an unhinged layer of chaos that elevated the stakes. He wasn't just a comedic villain. He was dangerous. And hilarious. Sometimes in the same sentence. Crew members have shared that working on The Hangover felt unlike any other project. It wasn't overly polished. It was fluid, alive, constantly shifting. Lines were rewritten on the fly. Scenes were improvised. There was a plan, one assistant director said. But it was always written in pencil. When asked about how the tone of the film was achieved, editor Deborah Neal Fisher said, "We cut it like a thriller. That was the trick. The stakes had to feel real, even when the scenarios were absurd. That tension is what made the comedy land so hard." Audiences didn't just laugh. They connected. In theater after theater, people doubled over during the photo montage, shouted lines at the screen, recited wolf-pack speeches in their cars afterward. There was a strange electricity around it all, like everyone had stumbled into something slightly too real to be fiction. Reviews poured in. Critics, initially skeptical of another R-rated guy comedy, started to reconsider. Roger Ebert called it effortlessly funny, wickedly sharp, and surprisingly smart. Others praised the film's ability to layer humor over genuine emotional arcs. The New York Times noted its sly sense of structure and authentic male camaraderie disguised as chaos. But the real reviews came from the people. Online forums exploded. Social media turned quotes into memes before the word meme was even in common use. Did Caesar live here? I didn't know they gave out rings at the Holocaust. We're the three best friends that anyone could have. Each one embedded itself in culture. The film became more than a hit. It became a ritual. Bachelor parties took inspiration from it. Vegas tourism saw a spike. Bars renamed cocktails after characters. Halloween saw a flood of Allens in satchels and aviators. Even the hotel suite, real, inside Caesar's Palace, became a sought-after location. Guests asked for the hangover room. Caesars eventually leaned into the fame and created a whole experience around it. Years later, when the cast looked back, there was still a sense of disbelief. "We had no idea," Cooper said. "We thought we were making something small. Weird. Maybe a cult hit if we were lucky. We didn't expect this." For Galifianakis, it changed everything. "I went from doing awkward stand-up shows to being followed through grocery stores. It was disorienting, but also kind of wonderful." Ed Helms summed it up best. "It was a movie about waking up and realizing you've done something you can't explain, that you have to explain. And somehow, everyone related to that. That's what made the film last. Not the tiger. Not the punchlines. Not even the rooftop toasts or the photos. It was the recognition. The way people saw themselves in the friendships, in the screw-ups, in the quiet moment of coming clean. In that 1-second pause before the laugh, when you remember what it feels like to be lost and found in the company of people who matter." People walked into The Hangover expecting to laugh. They didn't expect to see a version of themselves. But they did. And that, in the end, is the greatest trick the cast ever pulled. Not making us believe the impossible could happen, but making us believe it already had.